Hey everyone, welcome back to the Bay House Podcast, where we dig into AI, creativity, and the people reshaping how we work and learn. Our guest is Dr. Brad Fuster, Provost and Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs at San Francisco Bay University. He's a veteran higher ed leader with decades of experience in academic strategy and institutional innovation, and he's also a published author, conference speaker, and host of the EdUp Innovation Podcast. Today we're talking about where AI and higher education are headed, how institutions are being reimagined from the inside, and what it really takes to build something new while bringing students, faculty, and the broader academic world along with you. Brad, well, welcome to the studio. Thanks for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Locke. Thanks for having me here. It's great to be in San Francisco, and congratulations on the setup. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think this place is going to create a lot of opportunities and a lot of space for insightful conversations. And today's conversation is going to be super insightful as well. You are the provost at San Francisco Bay University, and one of the finer points of AI these days is, this relationship between AI and education, and specifically in our case, higher education. So I wanted to just dive into that with you, if you don't mind, and really start breaking down the layers.
Sure. Higher education, I think, I've been in higher ed for 27 years, and I have not seen a technology as disruptive to the way higher ed operates as AI in the past many decades. In fact, probably not since the internet became ubiquitous in the 90s did we have anything that changed the way we do business. And before that, it would be like the printing press or the pencil or something, something, or maybe the personal computer, I guess, like the personal computer, and then the printing press. It's really been a completely disruptive technology to higher ed. And I think higher ed's response has been pretty poor. And I can expand on that, but it has not been graceful. And I think we're probably still in the middle of the response.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that we're probably barely scratching the surface, not even being in the middle of this response. And, I'm not as deep into higher ed as you are. Obviously, I'm an adjunct every once in a while, and I teach a few classes here and there. But even in my short time in the classroom over the last couple of years, it's been disruptive, right? I've had a hard time creating my own philosophy around how to use AI in the classroom.
Yeah.
What the guardrails should be, and who should be setting the guardrails. And I'm curious about your personal perspective on AI within a classroom, and also your perspective as a provost, someone who's in the institution itself and trying to, in many ways, reform the institution as things change so rapidly.
Right. So SFBU is my fourth institution that I've worked at full time, and there were all different institutional types: urban, rural, public, private, large, small, lots of money, not a lot of money. And SFBU is unique because we're a startup university in essence, right? And so we're in the process of restarting a university from scratch. And with that comes the opportunity to redesign curriculum, to enact a new strategic plan, to kind of rebuild the culture of the institution. I got to hire all the faculty at SFBU, which is not a luxury that most other provosts enjoy.
Right.
You inherit, in some cases, decades of tradition, and schools are notoriously slow to change. Many institutions are super proud of, we've been around since 1890, right? Yale, 1703. Yeah. So things are slow to change in higher ed, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And I think in large part that's fueling what I would deem as a pretty poor response. In terms of my personal philosophy and what I'm trying to instill at SFBU is AI should be completely 100% embraced. There are some schools and some faculty who feel like, just please turn it off. Former institution, I had a faculty member ask me, can we turn this off? And I said, the genie's out of the bottle, of course. You can't turn it off. You can try and limit students' use of it, but that begs bigger questions. Should we? Should we be saying to students, you can't use this? And I think we saw, at least in my generation going to college, similar conversations around the internet. When you and I went to school, not to date anyone, we had to find information in the library, and you would find that information through a card catalog, giant pieces of wood furniture with little white index cards, and you would work with a librarian to find the resources that you need, which, by the way, were already outdated by the time they were printed. But that was the best technology, which is medieval technology, right? I mean, we're going back thousands of years to the printed word.
Yes.
And so now the internet comes along, you can do a Google search, and you could see lots of information, the information superhighway. And we started having conversations around information literacy. How do we discern excellent sources from less excellent sources, peer-reviewed? What is the quality of them? Do you take just the first one that pops up because that's the Google algorithm, or do you dig deeper? And now here's this next generation of kind of industrial revolution in AI. And again, higher ed's somewhat ill-equipped to navigate it. And so my position is we shouldn't turn it off. Obviously we can't, and we should be redesigning the learning experience to teach students how to use it and use it responsibly. And that requires basically a new syllabus for every single class at every single university on Earth. And that is a very slow process, especially where faculty, not in adjunct roles, but in tenured and tenure track roles, have academic freedom to teach the content as they see fit. And so to say, as a provost, okay, every single faculty member now needs to completely redesign their course, their syllabus to incorporate AI in a thoughtful way, that's a tall order. And even if people did have the political will or capital to do that, it's not going to happen for a very long time. And so what we have now is a generation of learners who are being taught with outdated technology. And higher ed's already under fire. People are questioning the value of a degree, especially when it's cresting six figures in cost. And now you add to it the content of what's happening is less and less relevant for when students graduate and go into the real world. It's really kind of like a double whammy at a tough time.
Yeah, so I eventually want to get into your latest and most relevant solution for that predicament that we sort of fall into, right? Having to spend way too much money for a degree and then questioning whether it's valid or it's credible within the industry after we graduate from that program.
Right.
But to your point earlier, how do we, because I also agree that we should embrace AI. I am a firm believer that AI can create a better tomorrow for all of us, and within education as well as in life in general.
Right.
But how do you teach an instructor, a facilitator, a professor how to teach in the age of AI when none of us have lived through the age of AI?
Right. Yeah, there's a conundrum there for sure. And we also have the added complexity of our students are using this at greater rates than faculty. And so now you have a technology that students are far more facile with. And so I think like any new technology, it will take a generational shift in the faculty, which again is very slow to change, as AI natives, people who are in high school now, in 15 years from now might become faculty members. That will be kind of a tidal shift, but it's going to take a generation of scholars to come in who have learned how to be co-intelligent with AI. The faculty who are there now learned how to just be intelligent themselves, right? They found the knowledge, they became experts in it, and now they teach it. And I think some forward-looking faculty or more tech-savvy faculty will embrace it and find a way immediately to incorporate it in their discipline and in their teaching. And in many cases, that's already starting to happen. But I fear that in the majority of cases, those faculty and the curriculum will continue to kind of sputter and be less relevant until we see kind of a generational shift in the faculty.
I mean, to me, you're not even looking for a faculty member in the traditional sense anymore. Not looking for someone who's able to lecture or to, break down a textbook chapter and create an essay prompt, to evaluate whether a student has learned the content within that chapter. It's almost like you're looking for a different person in many ways.
Yeah, I think the paradigm shift that you're alluding to is, again, when you and I went to college, the faculty were the keepers of the content. And so if you were taking, I'll just pick archaeology. If you were taking an archaeology class, you had somebody with a PhD in archaeology who for many decades had dedicated their life to that discipline, read every book available and written some books and articles and moved the knowledge forward in that discipline. And now they are professing what they know to students in a lecture format. And then we would go check out books, write thoughts, submit the paper, have the paper read, and that's how we would evidence what we've learned on that topic. That model is done. I think it was actually done with the cell phone, honestly. But now it's really, really done. Yeah. The idea of writing a paper to prove what you know on a topic is not the most useful assessment anymore. And so it's a philosophical shift that we talk about at SFBU, where the faculty member becomes the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage. And that's a huge shift for faculty. Many faculty became faculty because they enjoyed the platform of getting to profess their knowledge and coach students through that. And now really it's the coaching and not the professing. And so creating learning experiences, active learning experiences for students becomes the coin of the realm. And that is not how the faculty were taught when they went to school.
Right.
And so they teach like they were taught. And it's going to take this really radical paradigm shift to move the faculty member out of the lecture hall and kind of create learning experiences that are facilitated by a faculty member.
Yes, I'm going to ask you a question on behalf of those crazy folks like me who want to be a part of this change.
Yeah. Well, you are a part of it.
I am a part of this change in some ways. And so it goes back to the CV, which has always been a problem that I've had as someone who has always wanted to be a professor.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have an academic CV. I don't have a list of journals that lists all the articles that have been peer reviewed and so on and so forth. So I've had a hard time being accepted in higher education because I have a background in the military and corporate and in the startup world and now in the creative space. So those things all lend themselves to the fact that I think I'm a pretty decent professor in today's world.
You're a very decent professor.
Thank you. However, they don't lend themselves, those skills don't lend themselves to being part of a CV that can get me a call from a provost at a university.
Right.
So do you adjust the way that you evaluate candidates as well?
Yeah.
Accordingly?
Yeah, you're hinting at some architecture in higher ed that exists in certainly the academic preparation of candidates for faculty, and then the reward system that exists for faculty once they enter the academy, right? And so I became a tenure track professor at 26, right after actually before I graduated USC. I wasn't done with my doctorate. And it's a funny aside story that maybe we can circle back to, but once that happened, that set in motion a clock and a ladder toward tenure, right? So I started at, it was 1999, in the late 1900s. And that set in motion a 6-year window by which I had to publish and produce creative works that would then be reviewed and then would promote me from assistant professor to associate professor. Right. And then another 6-year clock that would take me from associate professor to full professor. And a lot of it is publication and peer review, conference presentation, all of that you've said, and national reputation in your discipline. And so what we're looking for when we hire faculty is the promise that that candidate would be successful in this pathway. That's the traditional academic pathway, right? So I don't want to put somebody into a professorship that doesn't have the preparation. So some type of research platform, some type of scholarly platform, maybe some co-published journal articles, peer-reviewed, that would then prepare them for both excellent teaching and also the scholarship rigors that lay ahead. At SFBU, we don't have tenure. So right away, all of that pressure goes away. And a candidate like you with a lot of life experience, without a lot of traditional academic publication experience, is a great candidate. And I think more and more you're seeing challenger brand institutions that are questioning, those that are positioned to do this are questioning the merits of tenure as they relate to student success. It's never going to go away. And in some institutions, I mean, I'm a believer of, I went through the process myself. I think in some institutions, it makes a lot of sense, right? In some institutions, based on their mission and who they're serving and how they're constructed, it will never go away. And it's that ladder and pathway will continue. At some other types of institutions that are emerging, I think the typical academic pathway will change, and that somebody who had a startup, who was in the Air Force, who had a lot of leadership experience, who's got some great life experience and really enjoys mentoring students, might be a perfect faculty candidate.
Yeah. I'm hoping so, especially for those who are very interested in participating in higher ed, who just haven't had the chance. I think that you're right. There is an opening. There is maybe a large portion of the population who can now become faculty and lend themselves to this type of change that we really need to see through over the course of the next years and decades, because otherwise I think we're in fairly bad shape if we're going to continue to take the traditional approach.
Some institutions will keep it. I think those that can afford to keep it will keep it because there's no motivation to change. Other institutions will try and keep it and they'll suffer. And you're seeing that. You're seeing 1 to 2 institutions a week close or consolidate. About 100 institutions a year will disappear. And then you're seeing other institutions that are really ready to innovate and try new things. And so, and that could take various forms. What SFBU done is probably the most radical in saying we don't have tenure. We don't necessarily care a lot about the typical academic scholarship and preparation because we're not putting candidates through this process. We care that you connect with students, that you motivate students, that you're an expert in your subject, and that you want to show up in that way. So you're also seeing some institutions kind of create an alternative pathway for faculty, teaching faculty. So where you just come in and your only responsibility is to teach excellent classes and to mentor students, and maybe an increasing separation between teaching faculty and research faculty. We need research faculty. If we're going to cure cancer, that's going to happen at a research institution with research faculty. But I think universities, especially American higher ed, is trying to be all things to all people and continues to try and be all things to all people, and it's not a good plan.
Yeah. I want to keep that point in mind because I want to kind of come back to that point about whether or not the question is whether we should keep AI in the classroom or not versus the question of does this AI solution make sense for this specific student in this specific scenario?
Right. Yeah.
But before we come back to that point, I realize that as we're having this conversation, we are in San Francisco, which is essentially the epicenter of AI.
Yeah.
And then surrounding us is the bubble, the Silicon Valley bubble. So there are a lot of people out there who don't feel this way about AI, and a lot of traditional institutions and students and parents and faculty that are sort of losing the inspiration to even try AI in the classroom. But this is sort of all happening as more students, as they're growing up, are leveraging AI. So there's almost these opposite waves happening concurrently.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on those folks who perhaps are not ready to adopt AI or have changed their minds and have said, okay, I've given this a shot. I don't think it's going to work.
I think it depends on the context. At SFBU, we're working hard to be a AI first institution. So we want AI embedded in really every class and every assignment where it makes sense to do that. So that faculty member probably won't work out for us.
Yeah.
Within reason, right? There are other institutions where that faculty member has a lot of protection in the governance and with respect to academic freedom and what goes on in their classroom. And even with the shield of the protections of academic freedom and a robust faculty handbook, in some cases a union protecting that faculty member, eventually students will vote with their feet. And if your class becomes increasingly irrelevant, students won't take it, or they'll just object. This generation of students, I think not since the 1960s have we seen a generation of college-going students that are very happy to object when there's an injustice or something's wrong, which is great. And so go ahead, take that stance. And if your class really becomes that irrelevant, students simply won't take it. And that'll create other problems.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You can only do so much, right? And you and the rest of the team at SFBU, you're taking extra steps to make sure that you remain very relevant within this AI conversation.
You try. It's a fast-moving entity, but we are trying to stay as current as we can.
Yeah, and case in point, there's this new program coming up, right, called the MBA Pro Plus, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So the MBA Pro Plus is a AI-driven MBA program?
It is an MBA program. On purpose, we don't call it AI-driven. And there's a couple, and we've had long debates about the language we use to describe the Pro Plus. And initially, behind closed doors, we were saying things like AI-driven, AI-enabled. And we realized that wasn't adequately describing the experience that we were trying to create for students. And so the example that I keep coming back to is Waymo. Here we are in San Francisco. There's probably hundreds of Waymos out there driving people around on the street outside this building. And Waymo doesn't market it as like, get in the car with your AI driver, right? We know who's driving the car, right? We know the technology that's driving the car. But their marketing is like, if you open the app, it's welcome to the most sophisticated driving experience in the world. Our driver can see things a human driver can't see. It can see around corners. It can see at night. It can see in the rain. It can detect things. It can react faster than a human. It will never be drunk. The car will never smell bad. You don't have to tip. You don't have the zeitgeist of having a third person in the car as you're having a conversation. And so they're really marketing, and of course they're all luxury Jaguar SUVs, right? Beautiful cars. So Waymo is not an AI-driven taxi. It's this super sophisticated, better than the competitor experience at a cheaper cost. That is our, at least for me, that's how I think about the MBA Pro Plus. So we're not using AI-driven. We know what's driving a lot of the learning experiences. Of course, it's AI. But we're saying things like human-centered. It's the design of this course is incredibly human-centered. We've designed it around the learner, and yeah, we used AI in a unique, never before done, to my knowledge, in higher ed way to create a really sophisticated learning experience for the student that is really carefully curated and cheaper than the competitors. So better, quicker, faster, cheaper, and those are the kind of messaging points that our marketing, not a marketer, but that, that our marketing is endeavoring to put out. So we can talk about the technology, and I'd love to like geek out on the technology, but that is that's our North Star, and that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, so let's break this down here. The MBA Pro Plus is a program that you can go through as a student without interacting with a real life professor. Is that true?
Partly true. So a large portion of it is kind of self-paced or flexibly paced, and there is a lot of kind of human to computer interaction. But with every single class, there's a human faculty member assigned to it. So it's not this completely autonomous. And maybe the better analogy would be like it's a Waymo driving, but there's a human being sitting in the passenger seat ready to take the wheel or brake if needed, as needed, whenever needed. And the student can really dictate the extent to which they want human interaction with a human faculty member or not. And I love that flexibility. I love that optionality for students. And that's the design. So certainly a student could interact very little with the human faculty member if that was their desire, or they can interact a whole bunch with the human faculty member if that's their desire, or some kind of co-intelligent blend between the two.
Now, are the students interacting with one another?
That's a tricky thing to accomplish. So the architecture, and yes, in some classes, in certain cases, and no, in other classes, in certain cases. The architecture of the degree is that students have the ability to flexibly pace their progress in the class. And so a typical class could be completed in as few as 4 weeks or as many as 8 weeks. The whole degree can be completed in about 9 months or as many as 24 months. And so students are going at their own pace. And unlike the typical online architecture of a cohort where 50 students start here and they go through together in lockstep, we don't have that architecture. And so we have monthly starts. Every month, new students are starting a class. And on the third day of the month, if there's 100 students in the class, they're in 100 different places. And so it's really hard to create purposeful and meaningful peer-to-peer collaboration. There are discussion boards. So regardless of where you are in the class, you can post to the discussion board in Canvas, our LMS, and respond to other students in an asynchronous way. So that totally exists. There's one class in Agile Project Management, and we, in the design of the degree, decided that we have to have students work together. And so for that class, we removed the flexible pacing, and we said, this is an 8-week course. Lockstep, a module opens on Sunday, you take the course, it closes the next Sunday, the next module opens. And so we are creating Agile project groups with a Scrum Master and all the different roles in Agile project management. And students are working in groups because we felt that the learning outcomes of that class were so specific. To try and replicate that with AI and have you work with AI avatars of other people in that role was not sufficient and not enough authentic context learning. So yeah, there is some very intentional structured peer-to-peer collaboration. There's some asynchronous peer-to-peer collaboration. Every class, there's a weekly synchronous call with a human faculty member riding along, but that's optional. If you want to log in, great. If you want to attend office hours, you can. At any point, you can reach out and say, hit the panic button and say, I need help. I am not understanding, and someone will respond to you. So it's both. It's
a very interesting redesign of what an MBA experience has been like up to this point.
Online learning in general, not just the MBA.
True.
Any type of online degree. I'm not aware of very many or really any other institutions who have done a redesign with this type of really sophisticated architecture.
Yeah, so I want to bring us back to the point earlier about not every AI is going to be sufficient to cover a blanket population, right? So let's talk about the population, the specific group of students that should apply to a program like this, and then those who have characteristics that you would say, okay, you're probably not the type of student that should apply for this specific program.
Sure, yeah. So when we talk about human-centered design, we're really trying to envision how our students will flow through this program and what structures will enable them to learn the best. And as I think about the typical student, it might be a laid off tech worker, right? And so there's some poetry in this. There's some poetic nature where AI is eliminating jobs in Silicon Valley. Oracle just laid off 31,000 employees in the last year. And those folks might not have a graduate degree and they might need to reskill. And so getting an MBA makes perfect sense for those folks, especially a really affordable, flexibly paced one. And it might be somebody who's working who just wants to move into management or wants additional leadership in their current role. I think this degree is really perfect for both of those scenarios. I think somebody who shouldn't take it is somebody who doesn't, well, like any online degree, somebody who has trouble working independently and really thrives on the human to human interaction and really needs a face-to-face situation. If you're thinking about an online MBA, I would say that of all the online MBAs that are out there, this one really has the most options for somebody. It's the most flexibly paced. It's probably the most sophisticated in terms of its design. It allows you to learn independently. It allows you to learn from a human faculty member or a combination of both those things. So I feel like somebody who wants that ability to fine tune their own learning experience, this is probably the most superior experience out there. But if you really need a lot of face-to-face and you like being in the classroom, if you like this dynamic of like looking somebody in the eyes and really connecting with them, it's a two-dimensional experience. I think eventually the president's vision is that we would take this technology and scale it to a hybrid situation with neighborhood campuses where you can take a lot of your content online, but then you could also come in and sort of meetup fashion. And if we find, this is launching at large national scale, if we find that there's a geocentric hub of students in Dallas or Las Vegas or wherever, we can have meetups. And I think part of the unpublished outcomes of an MBA is that network, is that network that you build. This is why NYU charges $150,000 for their MBA, is because you get that network in New York City. We would want to create that. We would want to sort of replicate that to the best of our ability. So that's maybe phase 2 once we launch, but we're really excited about what we've built and very proud of it.
Yeah, I mean, the network piece is super relevant. You and I are both graduates of USC. We both have our doctorates from USC, and I love the network, right? I thrive within the network. I make connections through the network.
Sure.
And so there's a lot to be said about that human aspect of going through a program together.
Agreed. And to the best of our ability, there's puts and takes as you design all of this. To the best of our ability, we want to maximize that opportunity for students.
And so I want to talk about another facet of online education, and especially in this case, AI education. There was an op-ed in the New York Times last month, and it was the president of a state college, I think in New York, but he was going through, it was a 7th grade classroom, so not higher ed, but I think the same thoughts apply here. He mentioned that his concern is that with AI driving the learning process, the students didn't seem to kind of struggle through the learning process, meaning they didn't have difficulties and they didn't have to sit back and wonder how to solve these intellectual sort of problems that they were encountering. And so they never had a chance to figure out how to get over the barrier and then finally realize that they were supposed to be learning something and that they had learned something by going through the struggle, that the process itself. Does the program or will the program accommodate for that type of an intellectual struggle, or will it make it easy for these students to attain and to just basically get the information that they need.
Right. You know, we're in testing right now. So we've built a couple of classes, and we've hired faculty from some pretty prestigious institutions, Dartmouth, University of Pennsylvania. I think there's even a Harvard professor from the Harvard School of Business, and they're taking our class as students, and we've developed a really robust feedback mechanism. And the initial feedback that's coming back is that it's actually too rigorous.
Mm.
And this is, from faculty who teach in very prestigious MBAs all over the country. And so we're examining that, and we're really trying to tune the level of rigor to be pushing students to their zone of proximal development. We want them at the edge of their comfort zone so that they stretch and grow. And just like when you build new muscles in the gym, right, you have to tear them and then let them heal, and tear them again and let them heal. And so that's really what we're tuning right now before we release. And I think students will probably find it pretty rigorous. Now, that being said, there is lots of support around the student. And so if they're having trouble, if they don't understand something, they can get reps on it. They can go back and do it again. They can ask for it slower. They can ask for it in a different language. There's a chat bot. So, you watch a video, and maybe a 12-minute video on marketing, and it'll explain different concepts in marketing. And then you have to have a conversation with the professor, either through chat or through an actual video avatar interaction. And there's a rubric on the back end that's looking to know what, to evidence what the student has learned. And once it's satisfied, you move on. If it's not satisfied, you can go back and ask more questions. Well, explain this again. Explain this in a different way. I didn't quite get it. And the digital professor will do that for you, even perhaps do it in another language if you need that. So lots of support. I also think there's more and more neurodivergent learners who are out there who, just because we've designed the experience in one way, like one size fits most, but doesn't fit all. And so asking for it slower, explained in a different way, with less sophisticated vocabulary, we have that ability now, whereas most other traditional online programs can't really do that. So I think students are going to struggle a healthy amount, and that our faculty who are, designing this are kind of warm demanders of students.
That's going to be really interesting to see. And I also think, as a part of this part of the conversation, I want to call out the fact that we sort of make this assumption that everything's perfect on the other side of AI.
Yeah.
That, you have a professor who's well-educated, who's experienced in the field and is teaching you this MBA course. But that's not always the case.
With
right?
human faculty?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely rare to have.
Right.
A human professor brings all of their flaws, their bias, their assumptions and their fear to the learning experience as well. So.
Yeah. And to add to that, we want our professors, our faculty to be empathetic and understanding. And we sometimes often make the assumption, as we compare human instructors to AI, that these humans are always empathetic, are always understanding, non-biased, right? But that's not the case either.
There's a lot of evidence that would suggest that's definitely not the case.
Yeah.
That if you look at the research on bias, whether it's gender bias or age bias in grading and faculty grading, it suggests that human faculty are actually way worse with respect to bias. And people also talk about hallucinations, right? When you talk about AI, the first thing, will it hallucinate? Human faculty also hallucinate. If you ask a human faculty member a question to an answer that they don't know, they will more often than not make one up or kind of piece something together that's not entirely accurate. And so we've taken all sorts of guardrails and installed them to make sure that our learning experience won't won't hallucinate. But humans are far from perfect in this respect.
How are you expressing all this to the faculty at SFBU?
Yeah, so the faculty have been involved with this from inception, right? That we've got some really incredible faculty, great colleagues who, of course, come out of Silicon Valley industries, right? If you drive around San Francisco, every billboard is like an ad for AI. And so these are folks who generally embrace technology, and I think are excited by the mission at SFBU to kind of democratize education and serve a tremendous amount of the population that's currently underserved or unserved by the current options and models available. And they see the value of AI in doing that. So they've been partners right along. The faculty redesigned a lot of the courses that were in our face-to-face MBA, and then worked with the tech team and our learning architects to make sure that the course that we designed in the MBA Pro Plus adequately represents their content knowledge and their expertise and them and their positions on things, and that it's responding appropriately. And so faculty are kind of leading the charge on this, which is super exciting.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So then on the other side of the coin, how are you expressing this to prospective students? Short of having them listen to this conversation and watching this podcast,
I hope they do.
How do they start to understand the nuances of how this is built and what it does to give them an advantage in this world?
Right. So again, not a marketing guy. I'm more on the academic side of things, the product side of things. But there are some really key talking points that we are trying to push out as we talk about the MBA Pro Plus. 16,000 hours of human design went into this. So when you think about a typical online program, what most do is they take the face-to-face program that's existed in various forms and qualities for however long, and they just kind of dump it into a learning management system, and voila, you have an online program. And if you don't redesign the class, if you don't really question all of the resources and assignments and assessments, you've just scaled mediocrity, is what you've done. And so we were really careful not to do that. We brought the faculty in and we said, hey, this is your accounting class. And we need you to go through every single assignment. We need you to go through every single resource, every single accounting principle that's taught here, and make sure that it's absolutely what you want it to be, laid out in the correct scope and sequence. And we had instructional designers and learning designers sit with our faculty and make sure every single class underwent that refresh. And then we got with our AI tech team and said, how can we lay this out in a way that is self-paced, is meaningful for the student, is flexible, and translate these assignments to the, to the kind of self-paced experience. And so you add all that up, it's 16,000 hours and millions of dollars. And so those are some pretty significant talking points when you say, I guarantee you, if you went to fill in the large university MBA, that did not happen. That process did not happen. And it's really designed around them. It's designed around the way they want to live their life and the way humans live their life. So if you want to take the first 4 weeks, take one module a week, and then you go to Mexico for 2 weeks and you don't do anything because you don't have internet, and then you come back and take the rest of it, you can do that and still be on pace. Or you get busy at work, or you have some event in your life, your sister's wedding, great. Take a week off. Take 2 weeks off. Just come back and finish. And we'll start sending you alerts if you are inactive for too long. But very few other programs out there allow students to flow through in that way. So again, not the marketing guy, but our marketing wizards have taken those concepts and kind of boiled them down into some pretty key talking points. And we think it's going to be really attractive to students. The other attractive piece of this is that the whole degree is $10,000 from end to end. So very few other MBAs on the market come in at that price point, let alone with a really superior design. And you pay as you go. So if you don't have $10,000 right now, you pay for the first class. And then as you finish the first class, you can register for the next class. We'll charge you for the next class. think it boils down to around $830 per class. It's a very low cost per credit. And there are scholarships available for the first 5 starts, for 4 or 5 starts that we do, where that price will come down even further. And, as kind of a pioneer in being the first in to take the degree, we're discounting it. So it's really an amazing opportunity. Really proud of it. Again, thousands of hours to build it. Really incredible team that came together to put it together. And the future is that all of the degrees that we have at SFBU will be built in the Pro Plus format. It's not just the MBA.
Wow.
This was the first one out of the chute, but now we have this technology and we've learned an awful lot, and we will build our computer science programs in this format, and our data science and electrical engineering, psychology. All of our programs will be built in the Pro Plus format.
Wow, that $10,000 price point is really significant. You can barely get a certificate for that amount of money, not to mention an MBA these days.
Right. Yeah. The price point is a key selling point for students.
Right. So I want to capture a couple more insights from you as we wrap up this conversation. And I am curious about any misunderstandings that you would like to correct, either from the SFBU perspective or from your personal perspective as someone who's working within the institution to change and update and reform the institution. What's one thing that you wish people would understand correctly versus making assumptions about?
With respect to AI?
With respect to AI within the institution or just in your personal life itself?
Yeah. I mean, I'm obviously a big proponent, right? I view AI as the fourth industrial revolution, and I feel like the institutions that are quick to embrace it will continue to thrive and provide a more relevant experience for students. And not all of the institutions that refuse to embrace it will suffer. Some will, and some won't. I think when you think about the landscape of higher ed, there's a spectrum of needs and experiences. And so when you look at the Ivy Leagues, they're probably not going to change. Mm-hmm. And already there's sort of an elite caliber of student who's going to the Ivy Leagues. And there's other institutions that are really well resourced and really well positioned. And I think that the wealth divide that exists in the United States may widen through higher education, because the students that can afford kind of the coming of age experience where they get to go to a university and go on wilderness retreats with the faculty and have the kind of Dead Poet Society experience will continue, but will be even more expensive than it is. I mean, it's already so expensive that very few can afford that, but that will continue, may consolidate, but that will continue. And then for the institutions that aren't doing that, there's going to be a radical reckoning. And I see it coming, and there's a lot of data to support it. It's already happening. Mm-hmm. And AI, it was already happening out of the pandemic, and AI is accelerating that. It's just kind of insult to injury. And so SFBU's really done a lot to position itself to be on the forefront and really show proof of concept that here's an institution that can make certain investments and certain decisions that allow students to thrive. I don't want to pretend that we're doing everything perfectly. We're not. We make mistakes, but it's intelligent failure. We learn from them and we move on, all in service of really providing students with the best possible education we can.
Yeah, I think that, to me, that's the point of all of this, right, is to make sure that each individual student is offered an opportunity to thrive and to reach their fullest potential in whatever way makes sense for them.
Right.
And to me, that's a misunderstanding that folks have too when they're talking about or evaluating these higher ed solutions. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, does this work? But does it work for who?
Right. Yeah. Who have you designed for, and who are you serving? At SFBU, our students are largely international students from all over the world, 40 different countries, but increasingly domestic students from mainly from California, but certainly from other states. There's a lot from the Southeast, some from the Northeast. And these are largely first generation, Pell eligible, underrepresented students. And so when you look at the data, these are the students who kind of trigger all the risk factors for retention and completion. And so we're really trying to design for them to make sure that they're successful, that we marshal enough support services around them, whether it's neurodivergent students, students with mental health issues, financial concerns. Like, we're really trying to make sure that those students get across the finish line. And the initial data that we have suggests that they are. Our fall to spring retention, and again, now we're talking about face-to-face classes, was 99%. And for that population of student, for any population of student, those are incredible numbers. But especially for that demographic of student, I think is especially powerful. So again, we are learning every day. I've made countless mistakes in the 2 years I've been provost, and I will own all of them. But we're really trying to show proof of concept. So as the reckoning is happening to the other institutional types, we can say, like, here's a playbook. Here's something that we did that worked. And so I'm out on the conference circuit, presenting on some of the bigger moves that we've made and presenting some of the data that we have. And on my own podcast, trying to have conversations that highlight and spotlight some of those decisions.
Yeah, so hey, best of luck with this coming academic year.
Thank you, Locke.
I'm super excited for the MBA Plus program to be launched, and really excited to see how that comes about and the things that you can do with that program moving forward. So let's have this conversation again, maybe in 6 months' time.
I look forward to that.
Provide an update, and in the meantime, hey, thanks, and I really appreciate your time here today.
Yeah, likewise, Locke. Congratulations on the studio. This is a beautiful space. Really very comfortable to have the conversation, and keep doing your great work too.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.